Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Royal Television Society Technology Centre virtual event, Building the Next Generation Newsroom. To introduce myself, I'm Kim Rao. I'm chair of the Royal Television Society Technology Centre Committee, and I am delighted to be joined this evening by Ian Moss from the BBC and Adam Leah from the team at nxtedition to discuss their hugely impressive collective newsroom project. You, as our audience, you will have the opportunity to ask your own questions towards the end of our chat. So please do make the most of the Q&A button here on Zoom. But to start us off, it would be great if you both could introduce yourselves to everybody here this evening. Ian, if you'd like to go first.
Great, thank you, Kim. Hello, all. So, yeah, my name's Ian Moss. I was a sports news journalist by trade, but for the last 8 years or so, I've looked after our newsroom computer systems at the BBC. So that's mainly representing all the end users and delivering projects as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And Adam.
My name is Adam Leah. I'm the creative director at nxtedition. I've been working in television since the early 90s, so I've been doing quite a lot of this stuff. But these days, what we do at Next is we simplify story workflows by removing technical friction. So that's partly what we're going to be talking about today.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, if you look up the collective newsroom project that you guys have both been working on and are responsible for, it's been described as a future-proof, flexible operation built around integrated workflows. But let's set the scene first. So what was the main problem that you were trying to solve for BBC News Services in India? And what did better look like in the first instance? Ian, if we come to you.
Yeah, so firstly, in terms of the history, so there's a law in India where most of the Indian output, as in their news output, has to be created by a wholly owned Indian company. So that obviously wasn't the case with the BBC. So when Modi sort of enforced these laws after sort of raiding the BBC offices, we then had to adhere to them a bit more carefully. So the options were get out or adapt. So what we did at the BBC is we spun up a new company. So Collective Newsroom is a new company formed by ex-BBC people, so completely independent of the BBC. But we just have a little stake in it, and we helped set them up. But they are running independently, and they produce the news for the Indian market. So here are some of the headlines in terms of the operation split that you can see on the screen now. So this was when Collective Newsroom was sort of first came into being, and it's a very new company, so only a couple of years old. And yes, so these ex-BBC people run the company, and they provide the BBC News in India.
So why was this collective newsroom the right kind of model for serving India's audiences and the BBC services, being represented there? Why did you decide to go with this type of model?
Firstly, the foundation was very strong. So obviously, with ex-BBC people, and they knew the Indian market incredibly well. So no one knew that market better. So that was the right model for us to have people who absolutely knew inside out what the audience wanted. So yeah, like I said, foundation very strong. And then working closely with the BBC, it was just important that we had people who understood the BBC way of working. So Collective Newsroom are kind of the gatekeepers of our editorial standards. So they sort of carry on the training that they had as part of the BBC, and they sort of enforce that within their organisation. And it was the best way that we could get our news across to that market, still complying with these kind of local regulations.
And probably the biggest thing that blows my mind about this project is that it serves content in 7 languages across digital, audio, and TV. So, okay, where to even start with that? So, what editorial or operational challenge what's the hardest thing to solve at that kind of scale? And it'd be great to hear from Adam's point of view as well, as to how you even approach that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, there's an expectation of quality with BBC News output. So you've got to make sure that the quality is high, and then when you throw in the 7 languages as well, the complexity increases massively as well. There's also like a brand consistency thing as well. So whilst we've got the BBC News brand, each of the 7 sort of output streams has their own identity as well. So it's important that we sort of gave them that freedom as well. There's a kind of framework around them, but allow a bit of freedom within that as well. So yeah, lots of challenges, but crucially, not everyone who works on that output speaks all the languages. In fact, no one speaks all the languages. So there had to be kind of like a unifying language, which is generally English in terms of technical instructions, and a fair bit of Hindi as well. But then you need the tools to just do what you need them to do. And so, Adam can kind of pick up how we sort of cracked that with 7 languages.
Yeah, actually, I believe now it's 11 languages. We added 3 more. I don't know if my maths is right. I'm not sure. No, I think from our perspective, we're already using a lot of web technologies. So in terms of languages, most of the web technologies have kind of got everything covered already. So it was, we had to make some small adjustments to how the script system worked a little bit to accommodate them. I think the challenges came from a little, like Ian said, it's almost the workflow stuff. Like you could edit a story in Hindi, and when you tell that story in Tamil, you have to move the shots around because the way the language is structured means that this shot needs to come before that one, otherwise it makes no sense. So it was actually uncovering things like that, and how do we deal with that, and how do we give the teams the tools to be able to deal with those kind of things.
And that's an excellent point as well. So from a cultural point of view, you turn up in India, you met with a team of journalists. What was that like? Was there initial resistance? How did you win them over? How did you start to integrate and introduce what you were looking to achieve? And how did you get them to buy into it ultimately?
Yeah, just to go back a couple of steps in terms of the procurement. So when we were looking for a system to bring into the Collective Newsroom, obviously the BBC were working very closely with the Collective Newsroom, and we wanted something that would let them achieve what they were already achieving, but also had some future ambition as well. So there was a bit of resistance in terms of something that looked different, because what we had with our previous newsroom computer system change was something that looked and behaved very much like its predecessor. And that was quite comfortable for a lot of people. And there was a lot of insistency that we need to do that this time round. But we sort of gently coaxed into new ways of working, because these kind of opportunities, they don't come along very often. And I kind of felt that if we don't do it now, then we might not get that opportunity for many years. So hence bringing in a new way of working. There were some compromises along the way, but it's important that whilst we don't completely change the way they work, there's that opportunity to just develop as well.
So Adam, then, when you were designing the system, what did you learn about the specific needs of the newsroom? Obviously, different mediums, digital, audio, TV, different languages. Was that I don't know, revelatory for you? Was it thing? Was there surprises? Was it a walk in the park? How did you go about doing that? Because obviously nxtedition has an awful lot of experience in this field, which is ultimately why the BBC chose to work with you guys. But it'd be great to understand from your point of view how you design that system and then how you introduce it.
So I think to say that we designed the system, we have to go back like 11 years, because this system has really fundamentally been designed to resolve problems and resolve challenges in workflows and in technical behavior between systems. So in a lot of ways, I took with me a toolkit, which is what nxtedition is. And that toolkit is basically an amalgamation of solutions that has been built with all of our previous clients over the last 11 years. So you get to a point where somebody has a particular issue and we've probably already solved that. And every time we fix a problem, we give that to all of our clients. So it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. So in that sense, walking in with nxtedition, I some people say you look very calm, and it's like, this is fine. I haven't got a problem. We just need to let's find it out. So I think I did my first initial visit to Delhi, and we sat down with all the senior management and also with some of the senior journalists, and we talked about how we wanted to work. And I think maybe Ian and I will get into that in a little bit and show some pictures. And then we slowly started to build out that workflow. I think in our problem came fundamentally from the shift in time frame, because there was a lot of smog in Delhi that stopped all the building work on the new building. So our time frame became incredibly compressed, and that started to put the pressure on a little bit. But at the same time, Next is extremely amenable to ideas, to be molded to exactly what each client wants. And so that's why it's fun to go to different clients, because nobody uses that toolkit the same way, but they all have exactly the same toolkit. It's very, very interesting to see that sort of flexibility.
Just to add to the time frame point, sorry, Kim.
Yeah.
Had a hard out to get out of our previous building as well. So this is a new operation in a new building, and the lease was up on the old one. New tenants were already booked in, so there was no wriggle room in terms of extending on the old place, which was good in a way because obviously it focuses minds. With the delays, we probably could have done with a bit more time to get things set up because you're trying to configure a system when it's still a building site. But yeah, it did focus things.
Yeah, nothing like a hard out to really focus your mind. So let's go back then to that symbiotic relationship that needs to exist really when you're measuring whether the new newsroom is improving the journalism, not just the workflow. So obviously one feeds into the other, but how did you approach that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, not really for me to judge the quality of the journalism, especially where I don't speak most of the languages. But saying that, they were incredibly generous with us in terms of meetings. So sort of pre and post program meetings were conducted in English, partly for those operational reasons that I mentioned, where a lot of the people working on it wouldn't understand the language themselves. But it meant that we could contribute and understand how things are going as well. And you get a feel for when a program has gone well from how people kind of walk out the gallery and when they assemble for those meetings. In terms of returning to your question, I think if you let you can let the journalism breathe if you get the workflows right, essentially. So if we did a lot of work on the workflows, and then you're letting the journalism do its thing. So by making sure that all the steps from planning right through to output are as smooth as possible, then you give people a bit more kind of license to experiment and to sort of try different things in terms of the stories they cover, but also the way that they cover them. So yeah, I think it's workflows first, and then that allows you to do what you want with the journalism.
Brilliant. Okay, so then Adam, from your point of view, I don't know, what walk or talk me through it. You arrive in India. What does this process look like, pragmatically and practically? How do you block this out? How do you work in this really tight time frame, and what do you focus on? What's your priorities?
Yeah, for that, what I can do is if I just quickly share this screen a second. That's the old gallery. So you can see there's a lot of different fragmented systems in there that are aging a little, if I can be polite, Ian, and getting on a bit in time. So once we replaced all of this, we replaced it with Next in the system. And so effectively what we did was we consolidated everything together. So you're looking at, the planning for the stories, the script writing, so the NRCS system. The MAM solution is also built into the system. All the AI stuff is running locally in the building on a GPU because this is an on-premise installation. That was important both because of, power cuts and also internet access, but also for data sovereignty. And then here is the gallery that's run from all of that. You can see that we have a touch screen there for the director so they can manually cue graphics, etc., things like that. That's all fed from the newsroom. So just to finish off, all the subtitling, the automation, the graphics are all HTML, which we'll come to in a minute. The playout channels also come from us and the ingest, and also the ability to post to social media as well. So we have them recording like voiceovers in the voiceover booths directly into Next. We're trying to make sure that we make the most of our resources. So it's not more about what we take off the journalist's desk, actually. It's what we add to the journalist's desk. Because there's no graphics system here. The HTML graphics are within nxtedition as a template. They drag the graphic into their script and they fill in the title. That's all you have to do. Then it's in the gallery and it will go on at the right time. So the journalists are actually adding the VTs and the B-roll and voicing the videos all in one system. And that frees the post-production suites to do the important stuff, the big packages with the color correction and the super multi-track audio stuff and getting all that correct. They can focus on those. And then we can recut their clean feeds inside Next and revoice them into a different language again. So even when the edit suite spits out the final video, it's usually just effects and clean. And then each language puts its own graphics on. And all of that is achieved using just 4 servers. So we do that with just 4 servers to do all 11 languages and 80 million viewers, which is really quite something.
What we're looking for in a newsroom computer system as a general rule is letting the journalists be journalists. So we have obviously journalists who are technically minded and know the ins and outs of our systems, but we have many who aren't, and it's not their priority. So we need to get those with the sort of the minimal technical knowledge and make it as easy as possible for them. Anyone who's got an interest in it, absolutely fine. And obviously, when you get into the gallery crew, they are much more technically minded. But we want to make it sure that make sure that a journalist can build their running order, write their scripts, and get the fundamentals right. And then anyone with a passing interest in the technical side, by all means, start exploring that. But you don't need to know it. I think it's the important.
Yeah. So this is an incredibly intuitive approach, isn't it? Is this what you call your single window approach, which I would imagine is a complete game changer for a journalist that's on a busy breaking news shift or any kind of, to the wire in the moment as newsies, the general, like the cycle of the 24/7 news cycle that we're all part of. But how did you find that the journalists embraced that? Was that something that they had to be walked through? Again, as I was alluding to, is it intuitive? Is it the functionality incredibly simplistic? And I would imagine through the nature of the multi-language approach, it needed to be.
Yeah, it's a question of, I've done a lot of change management. Change management works best when you can show somebody an advantage. You can show them that you're going to give them something that gives them an edge, or that makes things easier, or just works. Actually, that's fundamentally the thing we get all the time. This just works. I'm not quite sure how we got to that in the 21st century. But I mean, it just means in real terms that the journalists never have to ask themselves, which app do I open to achieve what I want to achieve? They don't have to. It's just right there at their fingertips. So they can ingest files, they can write their scripts, they can edit video, they can add video, they can trigger graphics, they can publish to Facebook, to YouTube, to wherever they need to go. And they have a single window for doing that purpose. So we're kind of living in a world now where you either have to accept fragmentation and put a layer of control on top of that fragmentation, which makes even more complexity, or you can consolidate into a solution like this, where you just hide all of the engineering and you hide all of the complexity beneath a single window view that's easy for those people to use. I mean, we design software for humans, basically.
It's heightened in the on-air roles as well, because on the on-air roles, you really don't want to be jumping around windows. You can't afford it. So where a lot of workflow ideas are generated by sort of us or by our suppliers and sort of working with our end users, this kind of approach is a very bullish thing that comes from the newsroom. They just can't afford in the on-air roles to be jumping between windows. So when we talk about any kind of messaging, I want my messaging to be here. I don't want to be hopping out to my emails or to Teams or something like that. I can't afford it. So is there a way that this can all be presented in front of me, sometimes on pretty diddly screens as well, when you're in studios or galleries? So there are challenges there. But as few journeys as possible is really useful for the journalists.
And to build on that point, the project emphasises the real-time data and the graphics integration side of things. So how deeply have those been embedded in the day-to-day editorial workflows? Like you say, rather than just sitting as an add-on or to be fragmented away from the process, was that an integral part of what you were trying to achieve as well?
Yeah, I mean, to us, integrations, we integrate with anything. We have a REST API, so there's no problem. We can integrate with anything. But if somebody comes in and says, I want to integrate my graphics machine, or I want to integrate my ingest machine, it kind of destroys the point of the consolidation, So where the integrations have to come in is in place of the things that are already in place now that are removable. And one of those actually is the integration to London, because it's necessary for them to be able to see what London is doing and to try to replicate it up to a point where they can, and then put their own stories in between, and all each language's stories in between, because obviously there's different regions, etc. So we had to build this integration to TVU in London between the open media system and nxtedition. What that was doing is basically we could read what was happening in London, and we replicated it in a rundown here, including the script data as well, actually. And any VTs that were put in here, because of course we're not allowed full access to the Jupyter MAM system at the BBC. That would be insane, right? So what happens is any videos that are put into the rundown for on air for the TVU in London, we automatically receive in India over public internet. So, sometimes people think, these things need cloud, and in reality, it's just API calls between different computers. It doesn't matter where the computer is. So in this case, it's the system that's sitting at Collective Newsroom that's doing the API calls directly to the BBC to pull in all of that data. And then we have a list and the stories that they can then ping off anything that they actually need to use there.
So interesting. I'd love to speak to you more about the automation side of things. And you said previously how it obviously removes repetitive tasks, but in your opinion, what should technology take off of journalists' desks? But where are the boundaries? Where should it stop? Obviously, there's general nervousness about what machines should do for us, etc. But in this, as part of this project, what are your insights, would you say?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, that we actually put more onto the journalists' desks. They actually can put the graphics and the videos and the voiceovers and the VO B-roll stuff into their script, and they can test it on their desk, or if they're out with their mobile phone and their laptop, they can test it right there in the field. It's almost like taking the newsroom to the story rather than the other way around. And then they can add the B-roll, they can look at it, they can check it, they can time it, for instance, which is pretty cool. If you put a voiceover in underneath the video, you can time how long it wants to be. And everything you're building there will go straight into the gallery as a playable item. There's no waiting for anything because, we don't abstract the high res from the proxy. Everything's on-prem because the Next engines actually have all the storage inside of them. So we store all the high res there. We play those files transcodelessly. So we actually transcode them on the card when they go out to the vision mixer from the playout machine. So we're very fast, very efficient, trying to stop all of this transcoding. Again, a bit like, I liken it to a swan, right? On the top of the water, graceful, and underneath it's really, really pedaling. But the users don't know that. They just see the swan. But because they can put all of this stuff in it, they're much more involved in the stories. And also with graphics, this is something that we're beginning to do. We'll have to roll it out, I think, over this year. But if they've got the graphics in HTML, we can actually then apply those to the website player. And we can also apply those responsively. So when we go to 9.16, then the graphic will change to fit 9.16. So there's a lot of things that are also coming as a benefit from that, which is effectively an unexpected benefit. But we will be able to deploy that this year going forwards to be able to mean you do the metadata once, and then the story can go anywhere.
That was a fun tweak on the BBC side as well, because our graphics weren't HTML. So amazing graphics team at the BBC had to HTMLify the graphics in order to get them to Next. But yeah, they did a great job.
And in actual fact, what I can do here, if I can just quickly find this here. So the graphics are excellent case in point. So this is the template, and these fields that you see down here, there's where you fill in the names, or you fill in whatever the detail is. So you can pick your language here, and it will actually change the language in the slug there with BBC News. So if I change that to Tamil, now it changes the graphic to BBC Tamil in Tamil, right? So all you have to do is switch the language on a single template, and it switches the fonts, and it switches the slug. So and then all you have to do is type in your details. We can even detect if you're mixing English with Tamil or Hindi or something, then you get the right font for that. So it's actually, it's pretty amazing job that the BBC did, basically using these HTML templates and sending them to us, and being able to have one single graphics template to be able to do so many different jobs. And that is, again, a big breakthrough, and simple, as you can see, really simple to operate.
That's incredibly clever. Is there any nervousness from your point of view, Ian, though, with a newsroom designed like this, and it looks seamless and it's talking to the BBC in London and all of that kind of thing? What does seamless mean for you, and what does success look like in that vein? Is it the speed, fewer errors, better collaboration, or a little bit of all of that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of all of that. So you obviously need speed, and it depends on your output as well. So some output is pre-recorded and or it's social and it's not being delivered straight away, but other stuff is very sort of up to the wire or live indeed. So yeah, it kind of depends what you're putting out. But I think all those ingredients kind of need to be in place, because you want as little stress as possible for the people who are producing the news. And so hopefully you put systems in place that make things sort of take the stress out of the journalists' day-to-day jobs. And like I said, the gallery roles, they're supporting the journalists. So they want the output to be the best as well. So we need to make sure that all parts of the operation are working very closely together. Because if one bit falls apart, then it all falls apart. So whereas if they're all working in harmony, then you really notice that on air, and with whatever output you're putting out.
I would love to understand as well that when you were just about to launch this, where there were still problems, or whether things that were working better than you thought they would once the system was up and running and in real use, or maybe if you could like walk us through what that looked like.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, getting things to work between London and Delhi, that was a bit of a up to the wire challenge, because we had this content that was editorially approved in London that had to feature in the Delhi bulletins as well, and it took a while for us to get that onto the systems in Delhi. And as Adam mentioned, that's not just the scripts, that's the video as well that needs to come over. So that made things a little bit exciting. The other thing was the fact that the output never stopped. So this wasn't an opportunity to sort of say, oh, we're going to pause and reflect now, and we're going to take a month off, and then we're going to relaunch. Everything had to carry on. So you had people who were putting out the existing output in one building and then hot-footing it to the other building to work on piloting. But actually, it was moreover the other way around. So we had people sort of piloting and sort of configuring the new system in the day, and they'd leg it back to the old building. I say leg it back, it could be a very lengthy taxi journey to work on. That was pretty tight, because it meant that your days were very long and sort of teams were very exhausted. So that was a real challenge on the people side of things.
And Adam, you already alluded to the fact that the weather was a bit crazy. There were intermittent electricity, that kind of thing. So navigating those out of your control elements as well must have been quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I can share with you here. This was one of my cab rides to the new building here. So, of course, we're doing all this in the middle of monsoon season. So, wow. Outside the building, just getting in was flooding all the time. So that was fun. I also got mugged by a monkey, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, I mean, it was of course challenging for us from a time frame perspective. Getting the hardware delivered, for instance, was a challenge. We also had challenges with some of the configurations. We had some challenges with the graphics as well. I mean, it's all brand new. I mean, you can't expect people just to jump even with the standards that we have and be able to produce something perfect first time. So we had a lot of work between our development team and also with the BBC graphics development team as well to try to figure out how to make this work exactly like it works at the TVU in London. So yeah, there was a lot of work put into that. And I think it also, Ryan deserves a mention, because Ryan was an absolute trooper as how he tried to get the gallery into shape, so to speak. He's the creative director, I think, isn't he, Ian Moss, at BBC World? But he just turned into an absolute stalwart of let's get this done. And I was really grateful for how he drove that part of the project, because it's difficult to train people. And they, of course, as Ian said, they wanted it to work. And because there was no choice. There was literally no choice. But at the end of the day, we went on air on the exact day we were supposed to go on air. We didn't have any delays and everything worked perfectly.
That's amazing. Congratulations. And do you think it speaks to the strength of your relationship as well, between not just the two of you, but between the two organisations, and how you collaborated so effectively on this?
And that all came early on. Sort of in the early meetings, you get a feel for a company. And so I actually thought nxtedition was younger than they are. So I didn't realise they had so much history, because the product looks so new. It's because it's evolved, but I didn't realise there was so much history at Next. But you know from those initial meetings that you're going to get along with these people. Obviously, that's not the sort of prime sort of driver in a procurement process, but it's really important, because you've got to work with these people over a very long period of time, potentially quite a stressful period of time. So if there are personality clashes, that's only going to heighten things. And as well as our relationship with Next, we obviously had system integrators as well, and sort of other people trying to get the building sort of fit for purpose. So there's lots of relationships as part of this project, and really important that they're smooth. And must credit the Indian team, the Collective Newsroom team.
Absolutely.
Like Adam said, the will there was incredible.
Insane.
despite all the challenges that were thrown at them, they absolutely wanted to get this right. And I think this is a cultural thing. There's obviously an element of pride in working for the BBC and producing BBC output, but I think it's a very specific Indian thing as well. There's sort of enormous pride, and we will get this right. And yeah, what they achieved was incredible.
Yeah, Atul and the team did an incredible job there, and that needs to be held up as the highest point, because without that, none of this would have happened. So
I'd be interested to know as well whether you had to make any compromises as a part of the process, because obviously the scale of it, the ambition, the cost, the speed of delivery, the editorial control, the cultural elements, all of that side of things. Were there any compromises to be made?
yeah, we had to do something with the workflow, because we had some issues that it was too far away from what they already knew. So me and Ian decided, or sorry, Ian and I, my dad will kill me for saying me and Ian. Ian and I decided that the best thing to do would be to try to replicate what they already had. So, and again, the flexibility of nxtedition allowed me to create a bunch of bookmarks that looks almost the same as they had in open media. So we begin like that, and then we start to move them gently to a new workflow over time, which is much more attuned to what they actually want to do.
This is an area where Adam and I had a friendly debate. This happened when I think Adam was in country and I wasn't. So I personally probably would have pushed for, let's embrace the new workflows. This is our opportunity. Adam, without me there to sort of point the finger, did sort of bow to their ways a little bit. But I completely understand the approach, because like Adam said, it is a shift from what you're used to. We had designed a workflow that Adam and I thought was a better, more efficient way of working, but you're working with these people and they're the ones who have got to put their output out. And also, just going back to that daytime in one system, nighttime in another system, that just heightens the anxiety if your processes and your workflows are so drastically different at different parts of your day. So yeah, we did sort of scale things back a little bit, but always with the option to ramp them up again when things are a bit more bedded in and sort of business as usual is more underway.
Yeah, and I also start to notice that they're starting to use more of those features as time has gone on. So they've got used to the system now. So now they're starting to dip into the newer stuff. So it might evolve there by itself. But I've got to go back and give it a push, I think, at some point.
Brilliant. There's a few more questions from me, and then I would love to throw it open to the audience. We've got a couple of questions in already, so please do get them ready or just post them in the little Q&A box there. So it's lovely to think of something from the benefit of hindsight, isn't it? So, and Adam, you've already spoken about change management processes and managing those workflows. But where do you think newsroom transformation projects, where do most of them fail? Is it the technology, the training, culture, leadership, all of that, or something else?
I wouldn't consider that they fail. I would consider they're not chosen. I mean, you have to choose to change. And so you have to choose something that will help you achieve that change. So it's less of, what are we trying to achieve, and more of it's too much change. So, it's a decision that somebody has to take. And I totally get it. I've spoken to many a CTO, one in the pub in particular, who told me, stand in my shoes, Adam. I got to tell all the journalists you're going to do this, and it's going to be hard. And I understand where the journalists are from. I understand, that they just want to tell the stories. They've got a system that works. Why should they change? But we're now getting to a position where some of this stuff is starting to be deprecated and isn't even evolving anymore. It's just stuck in time. And we have so much new technology that when you actually deploy that new technology, you can do so many new things. I mean, it's just about, using the new tools the same way we use the old tools is not going to get anyone anywhere. So you have to really embrace it and unlock the potential that we have with this new world of software development that's sitting at our fingertips. That's without even bringing AI into it, to be quite honest, because that's a whole other thing. But just choosing to change, that's going to be the hardest thing to do.
And I think that's leadership. So the leaders obviously choose the new technology. They make sure that the best training is in place, and they make sure that they're surrounding themselves with the best people. So leadership isn't, I will make all the decisions independently and without consulting anyone. It's sort of consulting with people who know their field, but it is obviously guiding, and it's making those key decisions when they're required. We've had some sort of project failures at the BBC, some pretty high profile ones as well. But yeah, certainly in recent times, and this is a great example of where the right choices were made at the right times, and you bring in people who are experts in their field. So I think that's important, that you don't try and do it all yourself. If I don't know about something, who can I bring in who's going to help move this along? Especially an organisation the size of the BBC, we have got a lot of expertise, and so we've got to tap into it.
Do you think now I mean, this is a modern newsroom, isn't it? This is going to be the way of the world. Are there things that a newsroom must be able to do now that are absolutely integral to be a part of a newsroom from a technological point of view that a newsroom couldn't have achieved or couldn't have done even 5 years ago? Has this really kind of pivoted and turned us into more of like a future forward way of thinking?
I think this comes. I think this has evolved even further, actually, because now I say a newsroom needs to be story first. A lot of people are saying digital first. I think actually we have to be story first, because we're seeing particularly stuff that's happening in the Middle East, stuff that's happening in Ukraine. Things like Telegram is becoming a private channel where information is being exchanged between many people who are subscribed to that channel, and there's content in there that newsrooms can get hold of, and content. There's cameras everywhere, at all these events, because people open their mobile phones and post things to Telegram. So we integrate Telegram, and then we can pull stuff from Telegram, and then you can put that on air in the gallery instantly, straight away. It's the same with the live feeds. We get live feeds from all over the place, different places. Even Telegram has live feeds. You've got all of these Facebook lives, etc. YouTube lives. So all of these things we can pull into the newsroom and use to augment our stories. And then we have to record the story or somehow turn it into words. We can use AI to transcribe that and turn it into words. We can write articles with the AI, get a human to run over it, and then publish that to the website with the stuff that we just put on air from the Telegram from just over there. The story is the most important fundamental thing. The next thing, whether it's digital or linear, doesn't matter. That stuff you can take care of with a system like Next, because everything's in one place. Then it becomes about speed. So if it's story first and you want to be the first notification on the phone, then every single step, every millisecond you can cut out of getting that story to its destination compounds in time, and then you will beat everybody by being the first notification on device, which everyone reads. Nobody reads number 2 or number 3. So in a breaking news environment, be story first and be able to get that thing into the newsroom, turn it around and push it back out as fast as possible at the highest quality level, checked by humans, fact checked. If you're 5 minutes faster than everybody else, you can spend 4 minutes checking each story before you publish it, and you're still 1 minute faster than everybody else. So the advantage of that compounding of time that's saved because the technology is hidden, the complexity is hidden, rather than managing all this sort of fragmented architecture, is very, very, very strong.
Just to add to that, kind of delivering truly multi-platform content, I think that's a change. Obviously, it's still an evolving process, but we used to craft stuff for TV, and then you would have your online edit, and your online edit would be the stuff that you really wanted to get in, but it wasn't good enough for TV, so you dumped it on the online edit. And obviously it didn't take us long to realize that's not what the audience wants. And as the linear audience dips and then the digital audience grows, you've absolutely got to serve your digital audience as a priority. So being able to take all this content Adam mentioned from all these different sources, and then do a version that's appropriate for your platform, so be it a linear TV package, and then have that same journalist ideally deliver a really successful social piece as well, to have a piece of kit where you press a button and your linear TV graphics will then become sort of web graphics, and your 16:9 suddenly becomes a square video. That's invaluable. And as Adam says, it's all these crucial minutes that add up in that kind of thing.
The evolution of the technology is just extraordinary, even in the time that I've been working in news, which is like 20 years or so. But you've mentioned on so many things there, but what is the next technical upgrade that you think is going to matter the most? Is it AI support, richer metadata, better personalization, the platform integration? Does that need to go deeper? What are we looking at here? What, if you had a crystal ball, what are you thinking?
Oh, you go first, Ian.
For me, it's probably a mixture of the AI and the metadata. So with AI, obviously, there are very few conversations that we have around news at the moment that don't involve AI. And I think the approach at the BBC is very healthy. It's ambitious, but it's cautious. And so we don't do anything without giving it some serious consideration. And there's a responsible AI unit that is very much looking at this. So AI is obviously hugely important. And where can it help us? And obviously, the worry that people have around AI is that it's going to sort of take away quality, take away jobs. Our approach is it should be taking away some of the mundane tasks that free up a journalist to be doing more interesting things. So, for example, if I craft a beautiful article and then I use AI to give me the summary at the top, and we've used this on our BBC Sport pages where you have a full match report and then you use AI just to give you 5 bullet points at the top. That's absolutely fine, because that's just sort of freeing up that journalist, then go and look at another story. But what I don't see is AI at the BBC sort of just generating content from nothing with no human eyes casting over it, because we want to keep that quality high. We don't want to just spit out loads of slop that is just going to fill up people's feeds. That it needs to sort of maintain that quality. But then the other aspect I mentioned, the metadata side of things, is really useful for us to know how a story travels. So how does a story travel around our system? How does it travel around the whole kind of BBC News ecosystem as well? So for something that's created for one bit of output, does it work for another bit of output? And being able to track that journey right from the kind of commissioning stage all the way through to delivery, tie that in with audience insights, and this is all kind of metadata related, then that helps you make your future decisions. So it helps inform what you're going to do next. So if I've got a story that's maybe serving an underserved audience, and then I get some really good data on it, I know, okay, so this bit worked, that bit didn't work. How can I sort of use that knowledge to inform what I do next? So it's not necessarily this didn't get many clicks, so we're not going to do that again. It's this didn't get many clicks, but this aspect did. So how can I sort of shape my future decision making, especially at the BBC, where we're meant to serve everyone and we can't just sort of chase the numbers all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I'm going to go off down this route anyway. But I mean, I think we're starting to. I did a keynote at the DPP leaders briefing the other last year where I said, we're in a post-cloud era because everybody's tried this. They're either using it, they have it deployed, or they've got their fingers burnt by the costs of it or whatever. But that debate is done. We all know what it is. We all know what it costs. We all know how it works. I think the interesting thing that's going on at the moment is the way the conversation is shifting to data sovereignty. I think we're going to start to see that become much more of an issue. I also think with the AI stuff, something that we're really big on is using open source AI software locally running on-prem. You don't need the cloud to run this stuff. And actually, some of the models I even saw today that NVIDIA's got one of its models down to run on-prem as well without any performance loss, be able to run an AI agent on-prem. Now, this means that you can control the cost of this stuff and the tokens belong to you, etc. So, one of the things that we love about that is that we can guarantee to our clients what the system will cost over a 5-year period. And the unfortunate thing, especially if you see what's going on in the Middle East at that moment, is that, if data center gets hit or etc., you end up, off air, and you can't be like that because broadcast doesn't work like that, particularly not live news. So the idea of taking all of this sort of cloud technology and this web technology and then installing it on premise where you have some control over it, and then using cloud where it makes sense, for things like archive backup to Glacier is great use of cloud, or transcode burst, also great use of cloud. But keep your fundamental stuff on-prem next to you, where you know where it is, where you know where it's being processed, where GDPR isn't such an issue because it's in the building, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the big change that I think we're going to see. If I look into my crystal ball now, we're going to see a lot more, old is new again. We're going to return back to on-prem systems, but using these technologies that are really cool, but on-prem.
It seems like there's still a lot of experimentation to be done and to try and test things, like you say, but with the solid foundation underneath it that's just reliable and reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right then. So if you were to start this project all over again, what would you do differently?
Stop the pollution in Delhi would be a good thing.
For me, it's make sure that your workflows are pinned down before you start any kind of system configuration. So what you don't want is to be starting to set up a system and then having those conversations. How do you think we should be doing this? You should know at the point where you're setting up your system what the workflows look like. And then the other aspect is don't do any of your training until the system is configured, because again, I've had this a couple of times in my career where you are doing training and you're explaining to someone, it won't quite look like this, it'll look a bit like this. So if you just imagine that this folder says this and this bit of media is going to move from here to here, and trying to get people who aren't necessarily technically minded to imagine what a system might look like just makes the training incredibly hard. So we did actually start some of the training with a Collective Newsroom a little bit on the early side, but it was soon abandoned, and then we sort of made sure that the workflows were pinned down. Then we picked up the training again, and that was a lot better, because when you're actually showing them the system as it's going to work, obviously there'll be tweaks along the way, but fundamentally everything was in place. Then I think that's sort of the big lesson from me. Get your workflows right and make sure that the system's in place before you start any of your training.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, we had to pivot there, so that was fine. But I think from a training aspect, what's interesting is that, Next Edition is I don't like to say it's a revolution, it's an evolution. It's an evolution of broadcast technology, because revolution is too strong a word. But when it comes to training, that's a revolution, because training those teams, each language teams, that was 7 teams, I had them all for 3 days, and that was it. And they knew the whole system, including all the editing and script writing and sending things to the gallery and how we were going to run this workflow that we'd then built. And in 3 days. And I just rolled them 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days until we finished everybody. And then they usually, after 2.5 days, they usually just run off on their own and just start writing stories. So, in terms of training, when as simple as or as broad as this system is, but simple to use, then the training becomes a complete revolution in this industry that no one's really seen before, if I don't sound like Donald Trump.
Do you think there are any lessons in that, what you were just talking about, that from the Collective Newsroom approach that might actually be relevant for other broadcasters who are trying to modernise but without disrupting that editorial quality? Because that sounds remarkably efficient, just to have those 3 days.
I think the people are everything. So if the people are right, then everything else will fall into place. So obviously with Collective Newsroom, we had a brilliant leadership team who knew the market inside out, and an amazing sort of team of journalists and technical team as well, like I said, with that will to succeed. And so they will get you over the line, but you just got to put things in place to make it as smooth as possible for them. So what I would say is, for anyone else going through this process, tap up your freelance market, because I think that was a little bit lacking in Delhi. We had an incredibly willing team who, like I said, were double shifting, but that gives you very little wriggle room. It means you exhaust your team. Whereas if you tap up your freelance market, get them sort of embedded in the ethos of your company long before you're into your training, then when you need them, you bring them in. They can keep the sort of existing output going, and then your sort of core staff can focus on the news side of things. So that is a key learning from me. So make sure that your freelancer are in place, because also, as well as the double shifting, if anyone goes off sick, then things get very tricky, because you're losing people from your piloting, but also from your actual output. So,
Absolutely. Okay, we've got a question here. I'm not sure if we can do this, but are we able to demo the creation of a simple script? So intro with graphics plus voiceover, for example, or is it something we could talk through potentially?
I think I can quite quickly do that. 1 second.
Well, Adam, getting it up as part of the separation of the company. So part of the reason that we've got a new newsroom system in Delhi for Collective Newsroom is to have that separation between the BBC. So I don't have access to their system, which is quite right, because they are independent of us.
But I have access to my demo system here, so I can sort of, I guess you can see this, right?
Yep.
So you can make a new script by just making a new collaborative script, and then this will just turn into effectively a white piece of paper. So you can say, welcome to the show, and this is also the interface to the prompter. So whatever you type in here will go into the prompter. If you want to put a video in to play So if the host wants to say, let's see this video, you just, everybody knows that I'm very famous for this, but if I search for cats in my system here, and you can see on the left side here, it just finds all the cats in the system. So I find the cat that I want to pick it up, and I drag and I drop it into my script at the place I want it to play. And then the cat will come in there. I just need to move this zoom box because I can't see what I'm doing. Okay. And then all the settings for that cat video are here. We don't use any MOS. Sorry, Ian, but we don't use any MOS codes. It's all run internally through something called DeepStream. The media is here, so we can choose durations. We can choose whether the vision mix is going to cut or not. We can choose whether it goes to ME1 or whether it goes to the video wall, in fact. So this is also the video wall controller. So they can do that. They can also switch it to voiceover mode. When they do that with this video, when it plays, it will pull down the audio on the VT and it will push up the host's microphone automatically in the gallery. And it's just one switch in here to set that up. And if you run this, that's what will happen. You'll also see that the duration of the video is 0. That's because it's going to now, because it's a voiceover, we put the script in for the voiceover and it starts taking the time from studio time, not from VT time. So we're even as plugged in as that when you select voiceover, we're showing the journalist here exactly how much time they're actually using. And then if you want a graphic, you can go into here. You can come and pick up, let me see, I'll just pick up this lower third. Say we want to just put a graphic in for the host. So we just drag and drop that the same way. Drop that into the script here. And then in here, you'll just type in the name of the host. And then the HTML graphics template should fire up and show me the actual graphic inside my script. So that's all done. And then I call this Adam's collab script. And these are totally collaborative. They can all see each other writing in each other's scripts. If I go to the root of my search now and I come to, here's my rundown from my studio gallery. I just pick up the script I just made. I just drop it in there. There's the cat. And if I push this space bar now, you should see on the screen behind me, my cat's just gone live and I can do the voiceover. And I can even on my shot box bring some graphics in if I want to, etc., etc. So I didn't have a very long duration on the cat, so it went straight into the next story. But yeah, and you can open the script up directly here.
Yeah, and in India, we would have tagging at the point of creation. So it would be new Hindi script, for example, and then all the Hindi team can see that script. And if it's not appropriate, then the Tamil team can't see that script. So all that tagging comes at the point of creation so that you can easily organize all your stuff. So I'm in the Hindi team, I can see all the Hindi material. And then when I create a new Telugu script, then all my Telugu team can see it. And where appropriate, there's cross-pollination. But where they've done completely separate things, we can allow them that separation as well.
That's amazing, really. And like you say that's completely shareable, collaborative. People can jump in and out. You can access that, and you can do edits. Like multiple people be working on it at the same time. All of those different elements.
Yeah, they can. There's a non-linear editor in there, so they can just record their own scripts. We have one client who said to me, he said, "Thank you so much. I come into work at 12 o'clock now." And I'm like, "What? Why?" He said, "Well, because I used to come in at 9 and sort out all the video walls and the videos and get the MOS codes and make sure the journalists had all the right things. But now they do all of that, and I just come in at 12 and sort out what video walls I want to use in the show." And like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Such a time saver. Thank you to that question was from Simon Waldman. Thank you very much for that one. We've got one from Tim Marshall. So in the RTS Technology Centre, we're very keen to ensure that the storytellers, in this case journalists, are able to use the technology to maximum effect to tell their story. What sort of training programme is there to ensure that editors and journalists are able to use the system to the maximum effect?
Like Adam said, the training is designed so that it can easily spread throughout the organisation. So make sure you get that right at the top so that you're not showing people stuff that they don't need to know. So obviously different roles will have a different level of training, and then ideally design it so that it can just spread without you having to intervene. So we obviously, Adam and I worked very hard with the CNR team on what the training should look like. But then the idea is absolutely now they run with it. So when someone new comes into the organisation, they can just pick up the system, and with relatively little training, obviously depending on their role, they can run with it and they can create content very quickly. So yeah, I think making that initial design is really important with the training.
And also to add to that, I think something that we haven't mentioned now, we also do all the radio in the Next system. So the radio was the first thing that went on air. So that follows a similar kind of rundown, but obviously, but without the pictures. Which I'll get into a lot of trouble with radio people, because radio is definitely radio. It's not television without pictures. I get it, but it was interesting as well to be able to see how that works. And as well, with the other thing with the training was that we would train the English speaking members of the team, and then they could train everybody in their own languages. They can write the scripts in their 11 languages. It's not a problem. They can name files in those languages. It's not a problem. So, yeah, it's fairly easy, fairly straightforward to get the training done. It's surprising.
And obviously, training is a huge part of it all. And I guess, you're mindful that things will change, things will be updated, there'll be new rollouts of various things, and that's all part and parcel of the workflow and the process.
Yeah, it's. We always say you don't buy a product from us, you buy a relationship with us, which sounds really cheesy, but it's really true. Because, as I said earlier, every time we do an update to the system, we give everybody what somebody else has paid for. So if a client wants something, rushed through that's very specific for their requirements, we'll build that for them and they'll pay, and then we will deploy it to everyone. So everyone gets the same software stack regardless. But that's this floating boats on tides thing, because obviously if you want something, then you'll pay for it, but you understand that that will be given to everybody else as well. So it's a really efficient way to do it, because we run one technology code stack. We don't have multiple versions running at different clients all of the time. We try to keep everything on the same code stack, so it's easier to maintain from a support perspective. And just to bring that into perspective as well, with support, when you have a single consolidated solution like this, the CNR team have one throat to choke. They just, if there's an issue with anything, if there's an issue with training, if it's an issue with the system, if there's a stuck render or something like that, they can solve it themselves. They have all of the training to do that. But if they do get stuck, they come to us and we will fix it very, very, very quickly. A lot of the problems with sort of different manufacturers from different products for different parts of that equation is this sort of blame game where, it's not our fault, it's that integration over there, they updated and now it's broken. So, we don't have that problem because we test everything when we deploy, and we deploy in a window with them, usually at weekends or in the evenings, just to make sure that everything works with each individual client one at a time, and play it very, very, very safe, because it's super important people don't go off air, and we understand that, we know that, so we do it in a very, very measured, calculated way.
And we needed to scale as well. So as Adam mentioned, the amount of languages has increased. India's a huge market for the BBC, very important, but obviously massive numbers as well. So there was 18% of the global population, 10% of our global audience is India. So there's massive room for growth. We've covered, was it about 11 of the 22 official languages? So there's plenty more room for us to grow, and having a system that scales and workflows that scale, that was really important to us as well.
It's amazing. Okay, we have literally 1 minute left and one final question, so as quick as you can. Your top tip to future-proof media students? It's not an easy one, is it? But do you have a top tip?
Don't lose that curiosity. Curiosity is absolute fundamental in journalism. So just sort of maintain your curiosity and don't be lazy. There are many tools that can make your job a lot easier, and you should use them where applicable, but don't get lazy. Sort of keep that curiosity, keep that hunger to create your own material, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I agree with news is important. It's one of the pillars of democracy, and in times like this, it's even more important that it stays that way. So this idea that AI is going to come in and start cutting packages, etc., you need a human in the loop. You need somebody who can tell that story. So the best way to future-proof yourself is to learn how to tell stories really well across different platforms. And I think if you do that, we all have the technology behind you to be able to help you do the hard part, the technical part.
Completely agree. Sadly, that is all that we've got time for. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to Ian and Adam for your time with us this evening. And thank you to you all as well for joining us. And you can find more information about all the other fabulous events available from the Royal Television Society at rts.org.uk/events. And we hope to see you all soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.